What's going on, everybody? John Matrix here. Hope you're all having yourselves a wonderful day wherever you're at, whenever you're watching this. We're going to be jumping into, I think, some Warhammer Fantasy. Could also be 40K, as the title of this video is called How to Beat Chaos. And this is another video by Pancreas Network. So might jump in between the lines between both Fantasy and 40K. We'll see. But links will be down below in the description, as always, to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to Pancreas Network's channel. So please do me a favor, if you enjoy this video of his, be sure to go over there, hit that like button, and if you enjoy the man's content, you know, like, he makes a lot of great content for, you know, 40K, Warhammer Fantasy, and other stuff. So check out his content, and if you enjoy it, be sure to hit that sub button on his channel. If you want to take your support for his channel to the next level, check out any kind of sponsorship deals he's got going on, Patreon, you know, his membership stuff. Check all that out. If you'd like to join us when I do these reactions live with my YouTube members, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. So if you'd like to take your support for my channel to the next level, if you've been around for a while and would like to do so, you can check all that stuff out and see if it would have any kind of interest for you. Regardless, thank you guys very much for just taking the time out of your busy day to come in, hang out, check out the channel, check out the video, and I hope you enjoy it. So again, this is How to Beat Chaos by Pancreas Network. So let's just jump on into it here. Volume up. We go.
Chaos is in a lot of ways the ultimate villain for Warhammer. Perhaps not quite as ultimate as Nagash, but you know, there's nothing wrong with taking second place. They're pure evil, which is a good start in my books. Hard to get yourself a better villain than the forces of hell. They're menacing and frightful, because again, it's hard to look at something like a great unclean one or a keeper of secrets and not be a little bit perturbed. I don't want to fight those things, and if you say you do, you're probably lying. And of course, that's not to mention their two most prominent features in my eyes. They not only feed off the emotions of living things, which means they have a permanent power source even if they aren't explicitly being worshipped, but also whenever you kill a demon, you don't actually kill it, barring specific circumstances.
Tangent. That's why, you know, in the 40K universe, I've said this in numerous videos, that's why in the 40K universe I really feel like the Emperor tried to keep Chaos as much of a secret as possible, because if people knew about Chaos, they would probably have a tendency to want to, you know, worship it, garner it for power, because, you know, humans, some humans anyway, you know, have a need to seek a higher power and purpose, and so Chaos would obviously seek to fill that void, and that could cause all kinds of problems, as we know, in the 40K and, you know, fantasy universes. So I feel like that was really the idea behind him not wanting to let anybody, even the Primarchs, know about Chaos. He wanted to kind of like gear humanity and the universe towards, you know, science, and I guess that kind of thought, you know, reasoning, I guess, and trying to diminish them of power, to then, you know, who knows, maybe go into the warp and try to destroy them themselves, or who knows. But I feel like that was what the Emperor's overall plan was, and obviously did not work out very well.
Rituals to permanently deal with one, it just gets sent back to the realm of chaos. So killing a demon doesn't actually reduce the amount of demons you have to ultimately deal with. It really just makes it so you have to deal with the demon again at a later date. Kind of like
unless you go into the warp, I think, to actually kill the demon in the warp, right? Kind of like in D&D, or like any kind of demons or devils, if you kill them in the material plane or any plane outside of their natural plane, they just go back there, and over time they coalesce back into their form, and you have to like actually go to the abyss or to the nine hells and kill them there to actually truly destroy them.
Alduin getting sent forward in time just so you can have that problem. In a lot of ways, they come across as unbeatable, but I don't think they are. It requires either being incredibly clever, incredibly powerful, or a mixture of both, but I truly believe the forces of chaos aren't invincible. The end times or a potential 40K equivalent aren't inevitable. They're not guaranteed. So today I've got a bit of a list of solutions for how to deal with the chaos threat once and for all. None of the methods are perfect, but they're not supposed to be. As long as they can, in theory, deal with chaos, I consider that a win. But before I talk about getting rid of chaos and war,
and we're gonna skip across the sponsorship here. So like I said, if you want to check out any kind of sponsorship offers he's got, any other kind of ways you want to support your, you know, his channel, check all that stuff out.
Going forward, by the way, for what I mean by beat chaos isn't strictly speaking to do something like kill every demon, but render them unable to make massive gains or meaningfully harm a majority of people. So for example, if in a scenario the chaos gods can only ever do something like corrupt one person every 10,000 years who then immediately explodes, that's a win. It'll also naturally focus on the 4 chaos gods the most, since those are the parts of chaos GW cares about, but at least some of these solutions can deal with chaos undivided as a whole. Now to start us off, the simplest way to get rid of at least most of chaos is to just kill everyone in the setting. Take a quick trip to Halo, bring back the rings, and fire them off a couple of times for good measure. And hey, there's some limited precedence in the canon for this. The Cabal wanted Alpharius and Omegon to get the Emperor killed so mankind would be doomed and chaos would go down with them. The Necrons would be fine too, so it's not like everyone would be gone if you eliminated all life with a soul. And over an Age of Sigmar, Nagash and his ilk would be fine. I mean, they're already dead. Chaos in the very best case scenario for itself with this can get some emotions from the Flesh Eater Courts and maybe the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, since those lads have an actual personality. Same case for the Tomb Kings from Fantasy, I would imagine. Sure, those 2 AOS factions and individual Tomb Kings would feed the gods a bit, but the few thousand of them or just 2 factions isn't enough to feed the entirety of chaos if everyone else is gone. Of course, this solution comes with the problem of, you know, killing everyone, which for just about everyone involved is what we intelligent people in the academic world like to call the bad ending. And for
we would no longer have a setting in order to play the game and or, you know, read books and stuff about. Everyone would just be dead. End of story.
2 of those 3 cases, it's not really even a win. The Tomb Kings and Necrons would have almost no chance of being transferred into proper bodies like many of them want, and neither of them would have any more vassals to rule over.
Right.
Nagash would probably be happy though. I mean, how many of his plans have amounted to trying to kill everyone all at once? I'm pretty sure between Fantasy and AOS...
I mean, Nagash would probably then just kind of like take over everything, right? For the most part. I guess maybe it would be like Nagash versus the Chaos Gods at that point, right? And who knows... It'll just be another great game, I guess, right?
He's tried that twice, so in this scenario, he'd be having the time of his own life. But also compounding on this is the possibility that the solution might not even work. Nurgle is the god of entropy and decay, the circle of life, and in many ways, death. There's a real possibility that while the other 3 major chaos gods would die out, he'd be just fine to start the cycle anew. Only now at the added bonus that everyone ever born is a follower of Nurgle, which is the opposite of a chaos defeat. So overall, this solution isn't great.
And the thing is, again, like, would Nurgle even want that, right? Because again, the whole great game thing, the idea is that they're essentially bored and this is just something that they do for fun. So if the other chaos gods were to die and essentially Nurgle would be left by default, and then all followers and everything after that would be just Nurgle, would he even, you know, want that kind of a situation, you know? Then what is he going to do other than just, I guess, spend the rest of whatever eternity is for a chaos god brewing more crazy viruses that have no real purpose because everything's already infected?
Both because of the obvious caveats of killing everyone, and because it might not even work. Again though, if you're a fellow Grand Alliance death enjoyer, there are minimal problems with this one. Nagash might just become all-powerful if everyone died, and that's a chaos defeat if I've ever heard one. Fire up the rings, Nagash, you know you want to. On a similar note, another way to do this would be to do something like a setting-wide Necron biotransference, or somehow turning everyone in the fantasy world or mortal realms into vampires. Undeath on the fantasy side of things grants some pretty good resistance to chaos on account of how it works. It violates both the rules of mortal life and whatever passes for rules for chaos, being anathema to each. It's not quite full immunity, and if a vampire chooses to side with chaos like a number of blood dragons did with Khorne in the end times, there's nothing stopping them from doing so. But if every single being in either fantasy setting chose to become an undead, I'm willing to bet it'd be enough. Plus it would supercharge the influence of either Nagash or pre-existing death gods, granting them enough power to hold off the chaos gods or maybe even defeat them outright. So while it might once again just result in an instant Nagash victory, it does fulfill the criteria of beating chaos eventually. Over in 40K meanwhile, Necrons don't have souls, and chaos needs souls to exist. You turn everyone to a Necron, you beat chaos.
You got
Even
nothing
if you don't give other factions
for,
Necron tech beyond just biotransference, the actual Necrons could probably use their anti-chaos tech to close warp rifts galaxy-wide while everyone else comes.
Well, and the thing is too, like, with the Necron technology, couldn't they, I mean, I guess, like, do demons in the warp technically have like a physical body of sorts? You know what I mean? Would it be a situation, even if they could, where the Necrons would then try to start like finding a way to transfer their essence out of, you know, their metallic husks, shells, whatever you want to call them, and into demon bodies. And then what would that do? Would they even want to do that kind of a situation? Yeah, I don't know. Because then the thing is, though, too, is like, were they to do that, then they would be, you would assume they would be vulnerable to the influence of the warp and the chaos gods, which is who they would be fighting against. So, yeah, I don't know.
Terms with being a Terminator. Of course, this is not something that would be in any way feasible. It would probably spell the end of chaos, but also in some way ruin pretty much every faction involved, especially the Eldar. Third choice available to you is to simply kill the Chaos Gods. You know, just do that. Walk up to 4 of the most powerful beings to ever exist and give them the old 1-2. Now bringing this up, I'm sure there's a few of you who are going to drop the old Chaos Gods can't be killed because they're crucial parts of reality nugget on me. And to that I say, go to hell. You know how almost...
See, I feel like the Chaos Gods probably could. I just think it would be a situation where, like, something would take their place, right? Something else would take their place. Because I do feel like they kind of are, like, aspects of, I guess, nature. I don't know if that's, like, the right word or way to describe it, but they are just kind of like, yeah, just kind of like manifestations of, like, primordial functions of the universe, emotions of the universe. You know, I don't know what I'm looking for to kind of describe it, but, like, I just feel like were you to kill Korn or Slaanesh or Nurgle or whatever, some other demon or entity would eventually take their place in some other kind of form and would facilitate a similar function to them. Maybe not exactly the same, but would still fill that role in some way, right?
Everything in Warhammer, especially 40K, is being told by varying degrees of unreliable narration. Well, whose word do we have to take on the Chaos Gods being unkillable, or that their victory is inevitable and they're a crucial part of reality? People depressed that they have to fight demons and the followers of the Chaos Gods? Yeah, those are people I'll take at their word on the matter. Nah, I fully believe the Chaos Gods can be killed. If you disagree, then feel free to skip to the next section, but otherwise, let me explain. For something with perhaps a bit less solid footing, consider the fact that each of the Chaos Gods in 40K came into being at some point or another, with Slaanesh being the last. Well, yes, there's that warp crap of once the gods exist, they have always existed, but I think it entirely stands to reason that if you can create a god, you can kill
destroy
one.
it.
And the universe was clearly fine without them existing at some point or other, so why wouldn't it be if you just got rid of them? For some more solidly lore-backed evidence of being able to kill the gods, we have proof from both 40K and fantasy. From 40K, the Emperor lit Nurgle's entire garden on fire and wounded him. To top it off, him and objects associated with him, like his sword, can grant a demon true death, erasing it from existence entirely as he did to Horus. If you can do that to a demon, I think it's entirely possible you can do that to the god that spawned the demon. You would need to vastly scale up the power to the point that Big E himself going toe-to-toe with one of the gods is required, but it sounds feasible in theory. Alternatively, Ennead. The idea behind him is that when formed from the death of every Eldar ever, Ennead will use that power to defeat Slaanesh once and for all and free the Eldar's souls from her grasp. While GW continues to pretend that the Ynnari have never existed, Ennead does grant them protection upon death from Slaanesh. Half of what Ennead's prophecy promised has already come true. All he needs is more power from more dead Eldar to be able to take down Slaanesh. Even Kegarek supposedly has one final jest that will free the Eldar from Slaanesh's grip. That's 2 different potential plans the Eldar have to get rid of a Chaos God right there. As for the evidence from fantasy, it's a lot simpler. Cain scarred Slaanesh so badly that Slaanesh retains the scar no matter what form she takes. It's a bit unga-bunga, but if you get a strong enough god, you can probably have them get rid of a Chaos God.
Right.
If you can scar one, I see no...
Well, and again, I'm still learning more about, you know, Age of Sigmar, but from some of the lore I've, you know, heard in Age of Sigmar, it sounds like there are creatures or other beings out there in that universe that potentially are on the level or maybe even greater than the Chaos Gods, and the Chaos Gods themselves don't even want to tangle with them. So
reason you can't kill one. There was also Assyrian's grand plan to defeat Chaos that had a 50-50 shot of either working or getting everyone killed. The end times happened, so clearly it failed, but I don't think that's the kind of failure that means it was never possible. It just means the coin landed on tails and Assyrian lost the bet. Overall, in any setting, it's an incredibly tall order, but not one that's impossible, and that has arguably pretty firm grounding in the lore. Hell, if you got Gork and Mork to cooperate on the task and see it through, they could probably barrel into the realms of any of the gods and put them out for the count.
I mean, like, if you could actually unite the orcs and give them purpose, you know, and send them into the warp, who knows what they could accomplish, really.
Eliminating the followers of the Chaos Gods probably wouldn't work, because they get emotions from all living beings, but it'd certainly weaken them. Even if you don't think direct worship has any effect for them, and it's just the emotions of living beings, losing all of their minions would probably hurt their plans. That of course has the problem of Chaos followers tending to be quite hard to kill, and of course they oftentimes have a literal hellhole to hide in if it looks like things are going south. Consider this maybe a step 1 of the gods themselves killing the Chaos Gods. Their mortal followers kill the followers of the Chaos Gods and weaken them, then Sigmar or someone comes in with the RKO out of nowhere and finishes them off. Of course, with those methods out of the way, now we have to get a bit creative. And to start, we'll turn to Age of Sigmar, because one of the ways to handle the Chaos Gods, if not Chaos itself, is trapping them. Slaanesh was indeed trapped by Tyrion, Teclis, Malekith, and Morathi. While yes, it was because Slaanesh was glutted on elf souls from the end times and couldn't defend herself properly, it shows it's still entirely possible to do so. And while she is getting closer and closer to breaking out, if it can be done once, it can be done again. Even in their own realms, the Chaos Gods aren't 100% all-powerful.
And then, like, just theoretical, right? I didn't even know that, you know, that had happened. But theoretically, right, like, if you're able to entrap a god, because you look at what the Necrons did with the Catan, right? Like, they essentially are using them for batteries now to power a lot of their technology. Couldn't you essentially use, like, Slaanesh in a similar way, right? Like, if you entrapped her in a certain way, could you not then just, like, use her as, like, a battery of energy to power things and just drain her of her or its, you know, powers?
As shown by when the Eldar just waltzed into Nurgle's garden and spent entire days burning his demons to ash. If he was all-powerful, he could have just turned them into ever-suffering trees immediately, and to just assume he didn't choose to do so because he didn't feel like it sounds like an...
Right, and there's been numerous times where various people have broken into Nurgle's garden and done things, you know, so it's like, again, if he was all-powerful, he would know that they're coming, prevent that. Again, unless it's part of, you know, their plan, or, again, the whole great game scenario where they allow things to happen because it's just fun to see how things would turn out. So, like, maybe Nurgle knew they were going to come, but just allowed it to happen just to see what chaos could come from it. You know, who knows?
Excuse more than anything. The only gods you can get away with saying that kind of thing are Gork and Mork. They do whatever the hell they want. Trapping the gods is the sort of thing that'll require some metaphysical dickery to achieve, such as Slaanesh being trapped between the realms of light and shadow, and it's probably not the sort of thing with a one-size-fits-all solution. Trapping Khorne would probably look a lot different, and of course whatever the specifics may be, it's the sort of thing that'll need constant maintenance and supervision to ensure they don't break out. But unlike all the other options, it has one case of working on an actual Chaos God. Not a demon or champion of chaos, but a full-on Chaos God. Moving on, we have sort of the reverse, cutting chaos off from real space. There's a few ways you can do this, and the most obvious and effective one is in 40K. Just build some more Necron pylons and bam, no more chaos in real space.
I actually hadn't thought about that, but yeah, the Necrons already have the technology to basically, you know, their Blackstone stuff or whatever, that can either channel the warp or basically cut the warp off altogether. Yeah, they already have the ability to essentially just, like, place enough of those around, you know, the universe and just flip them to, you know, the negative dial or whatever, and now chaos can't come in.
The biggest hurdle of this one, I imagine, comes from the fact that no one wants to work together to allow the Necrons to go through with this.
Right.
Everyone is fighting...
Plus, who knows what kind of resources it takes to create those Blackstone monoliths or whatever. You know, is there enough material to actually make enough of them to where you can make a kind of network to do that? Who knows?
everyone else, and getting along long enough to deal with actual demons from hell is the sort of thing that's beyond 40k for more than a few battles at a time. But they nearly...
And then, like, also, what would the repercussions be? Should they make a network like that and then, you know, it gets sabotaged and they reverse the polarity and now our realms just merge together, essentially, you know?
shut down the Eye of Terror with Cadia's pylons, and before the Great Rift, that was the biggest intersection between reality and the warp. Theoretically, it can definitely be done. Obviously, this comes with a whole lot of caveats if it did work. Psychers would still be vulnerable to the predators of the warp, warp travel itself is just asking for demons to show up, but most factions have some measures to deal with these specific instances. For example, Geller Fields, Eldar Ghost Helms preventing perils, and the tried and true method of shooting any at-risk Psychers in the head. Proper mastery of one's psychic power can also prevent demons from invading a Psyker's mind. Not perfectly, none of what I've mentioned so far is, but they can certainly help. And let's not forget about the Tyranids. The shadow over the warp can get so strong it removes warp rifts, especially if the hive mind designs a fleet with that goal in mind. The problem with this solution, at least to me, isn't that the methods are impossible, and more the fact that the effort required to implement them en masse are impossible. Getting the...
Yeah. That also brings up another point, right? Like, I don't know, they haven't really gone, as far as I know, in the 40k setting, right, too in depth on exactly what the Tyranid hive mind is and its power. But, like, you know, they're able to essentially nullify the warp. So, like, what if you were to bring the hive mind face to face with a chaos god? You know, what would happen there? Would the Tyranid hive mind or whatever have the ability to kind of overwhelm and absorb I guess, right, that's one of the things the Tyranids don't really mess with the demons, right? Because, like, at least in real in real space, like, when you kill the demon, there's no, like, biomass for them to consume, right? But, like, what happens if the Tyranids go into the warp? Would they be able to consume their warp essence and use it? Could they convert that warp essence into biomass? And if so, like, if the hive mind, you would think if the hive mind was capable of doing something like that, right, that it could have happened already, or maybe just doesn't care. Who knows? It's just, again, a theoretical, you know, what if thing. But yeah, you know, what would happen in that scenario?
Imperium to train every single Psyker they have on how to master their gifts to the point of being resistant to demons would be almost impossible from a logistical standpoint. There's just too many people. Even if they went out of their way to do so, some would fall through the cracks or awaken their potential after the chance to help comes along. And from a morality standpoint, the Imperium doesn't care about doing this because it doesn't care about their right to live. In the Imperium of Man, your right to live ends the moment you stop being useful, and a Psyker at risk of becoming a portal to the warp is most certainly no longer useful to the Imperium. It would also require a decent amount of cooperation from all factions to some degree, and that once again isn't happening. You'd have to get the entire galaxy to agree on a minimal warp usage treaty, and that includes all those Xenos empires you forget about, like the Coral. Or, of course, allowing the Tyranids to grow strong enough to blot out chaos in its entirety, and that's just trading one villain for another. Plus, they don't like going for chaos, and you're not going to convince them to do it. Technically possible, definitely not going to happen. The second way to do this, and one that is only technically possible in all settings, is to fortify any entryways chaos has into real space so much that they just can't break through. Having one Cadia is no longer enough. Every planet with evil...
But then, again, because you look at what happened to Cadia, right? Like, there would be eventually probably some ways of them, you know, backfiring and opening the rifts greater. I mean, I guess, like, Cadia is kind of a... Oh, excuse me. Oh. Cadia is kind of a unique situation because they had, you know, the black stone pillars there, and then the fortress, you know, crashed into them, which widened and disrupted the warp even more and created the tear greater. So, like, there might not be scenarios where something like that could happen at every point where they could fortify warp and portal entrances and exits, you know, and stuff like that, but who knows?
Even the slightest bit higher chance of a chaotic incursion.
Also, it would require a lot of resources to essentially just, like, fortify stuff and man it properly. And again, it would probably have to have some kind of intergalactic treaties between races where it's like, these are kind of demilitarized zones, or, you know, where like we have to agree to commit a certain amount of resources to just fortifying these areas. There's no fighting in these areas amongst each other. You know, we're in these zones. We're only here to fight the chaos, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that ain't gonna happen either.
Persian is now Acadia. There is no longer one Prague in Kislev that is held against dozens of chaos sieges. Every city in Kislev is now Prague. Nordland is going to look like Normandy Beach, and any realm gates are going to be watched by so many Stormcast Eternals you won't be able to rip ass without one of them jumping you for being a possible worshipper of Nurgle. The problems with this one are obvious. Resources. The Imperium does not have the resources necessary to turn every planet into Acadia. The Empire of Kislev do not have the resources to turn every single city into a 20 layers deep castle. None of the gods or their factions do. And even if they did, and who knows, the Imperium may damn well if it could just stop being even a quarter as inefficient as it is, building these fortifications takes time. It requires not only for there to be no problems with constructing and manning the forts, such as traitors or sabotage, but for chaos or other factions not to intervene. The various types of...
Well, and the thing is also, at least in the 40K universe, right, like, AI would be a big solution to that problem, right? Like, if you could build AI that would be incorruptible to the warp in some way, then you could just build a bunch of, you know, machines that could just sit there and man all that, or build all that, you know, and then you wouldn't have to necessarily put that much actual manned resources to that. But that there in and of itself would be the problem, that, you know, at least any kind of AI the Imperium knows about is susceptible to chaos. From what I understand, though, like the Leagues of Votann, they're sentient AIs. I forget what they're called. I seem to be immune to the warp, right? Because they didn't rise up during the AI rebellion, during the dark ages of technology, like, you know, what happened in the Imperium side of things. Now, maybe it's because they're resistant to the warp, or maybe it's because they were cut off because they're so far into the galactic core that chaos didn't spread there. You know, who knows? But from my understanding, I think that that AI is resistant or uncorruptible by the warp. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, I mean, you know, the Leagues of Votann could be a big ally in that kind of scenario.
Elves would probably let it happen in whatever setting they inhabit. I mean, hell, Teclis would probably help out with making a super fortified realm gate. But even ignoring the fact that Chaos isn't just going to sit there and let you make the biggest fortress possible, plenty of other factions won't either. Every flavor of Orc Warhammer has is going to beeline it for what is by all means going to result in one hell of a fight. The Tyranids are going to see all this construction going on, realize it means a lot of construction workers, and start invading for all that sweet biomass. And if you think Nagash would just let Sigmar or the forces of Order build a super fortress without intervening, you're out of your goddamned mind. Out of every single possible solution, this is one of the most unlikely. Not only does it require intense amounts of resources and some small amount of cooperation between factions who hate each other, those fortifications also need to hold out against an endless tide of demons. But as with pretty much every solution so far, it can theoretically work. While in the long term it doesn't get rid of them, when it comes to individual battles, banishing a demon and killing it are the same thing. The one you shot isn't going to be making a reappearance in the same fight. And hey, part of why Sigmar was trapped in the Elven Vortex by Tzeentch was because the Chaos Gods feared he'd unite Order against them and ensure their plans always failed. If they're afraid of that, then surely a super fortress that can hold the line forever could work. So all you need to do is...
And then, of course, that in and of itself, you know, the fact that they were afraid that he would do that means that that would be a probability that could have success. So, again, you know, something else that could happen that Chaos is afraid of.
Make sure these fortresses never fall, they all have constant maintenance, and that you have the economy to forever supply these country-sized fortresses. Easy. Actually, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, Balthasar Gelt and some priests and wizards walled off the entire Empire of Man. Yeah, it got some cracks in it eventually, but it breached the clouds it was so tall, and God only knows how thick it was. Before it fell because the priests supporting it withdrew their support, I'm pretty sure the only things that got past it were the Changeling and a breach led by Acold Hellbrass, which failed. Why the hell didn't anyone just do that again? Fuck's Sigmar did it for an entire realm of reality. This is actually a lot more feasible than you'd think. Now, this next one is perhaps even less likely
Just
to
build a
work,
wall.
because it requires everyone in the settings collectively named Warhammer to get along. But since the Chaos Gods feed on emotions, negative ones of course being the most prevalent, it should theoretically be possible to change them fundamentally by worshipping them in different forms.
Right.
Maybe give Khorne blood in the form of donations, that sort of thing. Going forward on the assumption that both Chaos...
Well, and again, I've said this in previous videos too, like, they're feeding off of, like, all the hatred and hostility and the emotions that rile up from that. So, like, if you could actually achieve peace and everyone would stop fighting, then their current power base would shift and they would diminish or change into some other kind of form, you know? So again, going back to the reason why the Emperor didn't want to let people know about chaos is because he wanted to undermine their power and try to spread out and conquer the galaxy as quickly as possible and establish this, you know, real belief in science and logic, and that there isn't any kind of supernatural anything to undermine their power.
itself and the Big Four are shaped by the beliefs of moral races, worshipping them in different ways should theoretically make the Chaos Gods not evil. Getting everyone to just generally chill the hell out might have a similar effect. And I'd count that as defeating them, since Chaos, while still being around, wouldn't be nearly as antagonistic anymore. And there's some small amount of evidence in 40K to support this, since it was the war in heaven that caused the foundations of Chaos to form. It was such a shit show that the warp itself became as turbulent as it would eventually become. I think you could reverse that and make it calm once again. Of course, the issue with this one is that the settings of Warhammer are so god-awful that it would require fundamentally changing them on a level that's more or less impossible. You wouldn't have to just get the followers of Chaos to sit down and play nice, you'd have to do it between every faction in the setting. Get the Orcs to chill out with the war, get the Imperium to stop being so xenophobic. Things that just generally are not going to happen. People are always going to want a war god here, and Khorne's a pretty damn good one, much as it pains me to admit it. Trying to get the followers of Khorne to either worship indifferently or just calm down in general is the sort of thing that'll just get you added to the Skull Throne. Really, I've just mentioned this possibility for the sake of the theoretical. Gilliman would be proud of me, I'm sure. On a related note, trying to form other gods of chaos based on kinder emotions would likely see a similar failed outcome. Perhaps it'd work a bit better, but odds are decent that the chaos gods might just strangle this nascent kind god of chaos in its infancy. Still, it would be cool to see nicer chaos gods in the wild, an actually honorable warrior god, a life god who doesn't fill you with cancer. It'd be cool in theory. Shame that if they existed, they'd probably get scar-branded before they could do anything. Plus, in all honesty, it'd probably be more worthwhile to just pour your hopes into an existing god. Sigmar, Teclis, Kegarak, a lot of better options than maybe getting some minor godling that won't do much in the end. Narratively, it would at least give Chaos some more depth, but functionally, it's not going anywhere. Although that being said, an existing god could come along and usurp Chaos from under the Big Four's feet. Now, this working is something that's phenomenally unlikely, but it has major precedence from the end times of all places. Nagash planned on ascending to godhood and basically becoming Chaos, ensuring his ultimate victory as he not only had complete control over death, but also chaos. It should come as no surprise that it failed, but if you look at Nagash's list of failures, there's something very noteworthy about them. Aside from the Skaven being involved in pretty much all of them, Nagash's plans fail because he's stopped, not because they have no chance of working. I mean, the Chaos Gods started throwing everything they could at him during the end times when he returned out of fear that he'd succeed. So on some level, it is feasible. The last potentially feasible method that comes to my mind is a sort of mass sacrifice method, where the souls of all the followers of the gods sacrifice themselves and give their spirit to their patron deity. Every Imperial jumps into an Emperor-shaped black hole to fuel them, the Eldar finally all just give in and end it to empower Ennead, and over in fantasy, everyone either ends up empowering gods like Sigmar, Asurian, or Cain. And there's one...
I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting, because then we'd have a giant kind of god-off, right, you know? And that would be some kind of universe-altering event that would set up for whatever the next age of the universe would be.
Again, solid evidence to at least partially support this, since the thing with Ennead was the original plan to bring him into being. All the Eldar die, Ennead is born, / gets obliterated. Who's to say this couldn't work with other gods? Of course, even with the mostly solidly confirmed case of Iniad, this might not have been enough. Many Eldar consider the Ynnari to be Eldar heresy, so quite frankly, it might have ultimately failed and immediately damned all of them if they took the plunge. And consider that the Eldars are masters of their psychic powers and probably able to direct where their souls go to some limited degree with something like Spirit Stones. Other factions going a similar route might just end up automatically losing because they lost all their manpower at best, and at worst, instantly give all those souls to Chaos instead of the Emperor. Over in Fantasyland, the issues are much the same, only with the added benefit of it almost certainly just going to empower Nagash against the other gods if you do it in Age of Sigmar. He controls all the afterlives after all, everything that dies ends up in his bony claws sooner or later. It would technically work, it's just going to result in something that's just as bad as Chaos.
Well, I mean, like, you look at the Stormcast Eternals, right? Like, every time they die, Sigmar reforges them, but Nagash takes a little bit of them. So even though, you know, they are technically being born, eventually they become, like, essentially kind of like the Necrons, right? They become kind of like mindless, soulless husks that just keep being reborn to fight against Chaos. And they've lost all of what they originally were because Nagash keeps taking bits of their soul away every time they resurrect. So, like, yeah.
Winning. To repeat myself, though, Grand Alliance death is where the true enlightened thinkers of AOS go. Those realms are rightfully his, so this is only a win as far as I care. The biggest hurdle, of course, here is in convincing every single one of your followers to not only end their lives for you, but entrust their immortal souls with you directly. And not with an afterlife like the Emperor might be building, but directly giving it to the god they follow. For some of them, it probably wouldn't be too hard. Alariel could probably convince a good portion of the tree spirits of the Sylvaneth to do it, such as their devotion to her. And if you could convince the Fire Slayers it would result in Grimnir coming back, they'd probably take their lives on the spot. But others would naturally be much more hesitant. Plenty of 40k books show that Emperor worship isn't always on the fanatical level of everyone being willing to swallow a live grenade because a priest asked them to. Plenty of people would refuse, and I doubt every citizen of the Empire of Man or the cities of Sigmar would do the same either. I'd also like to briefly mention that from a moral standpoint this is beyond horrific, but this is Warhammer. Atrocities are both a given and regularly performed.
Yeah.
No sense taking a perfectly...
I was gonna say that's just another Saturday in the Warhammer universe.
Good option to deal with Chaos once and for all off the table just because it's a little bit monstrous. Besides, things like servitors exist. You're telling me you'd rather get turned into one of those than potentially become one with Sigmar? Any further methods I came up with are a bit goofy, so really not something too worth considering. That being said, I am a big fan of the method of getting everyone everywhere constantly blackout drunk to cause Chaos to lose all its power.
I mean, that works too.
Yes, some people would get into a drunken brawl, but most people would be too busy partying to pay Khorne's constant demand for bloodshed any mind. They'd be too out of their mind to have half the brain power needed for a Tzeentch scheme. And of course, alcohol is a disinfectant. That'll make sure Nurgle can't get his dirty hands on your soul either. Now, perhaps this might...
Slaanesh would be the only one that might get empowered, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, things happen when people get drunk.
Empower Slaanesh, but if everyone's having a reality-wide party, that means the emotions are going to be largely positive. And either way, I don't think a nice buzz is enough to provide Slaanesh with the excess she needs. Just make sure no one breaks out the cocaine. As for the feasibility of this one, you just have to convince everyone everywhere to lay down their arms and have a drink instead. For some factions like the Undead, basically impossible. For others like the Ogres or Dwarfs, they might damn well be doing that before you ask them to. And that's about all the methods I've found or come up with. Obviously, all of these are easier said than done. I just thought it'd be a fun video on the hypothetical level. Chaos being portrayed as unbeatable isn't that fun. It just makes you think, what's the point of trying to stop them? Might as well get it over with and give in. And again, beating them doesn't mean getting rid of the Chaos Gods. They aren't all powerful, and even if you believe they can't be killed, they absolutely can be beaten. And since I'm worried people might think otherwise, no, I don't want any of these scenarios to actually happen. Warhammer would be a lot less fun if you just got rid of Chaos. Let me know of any ways you might have to beat Chaos. And as always, thinking to my wonderful channel members, you are the chaos to my chaos follower, the thing that keeps me going in the name of making things worse. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching and take care out there.
What's he got for us at the end here?
Of course, there are plenty of out-of-40k canon ways to do it, but pulling other franchises in to fix the problems just feels like cheating, you know? That being said, at least 2 ways to guaranteed fix Chaos exist. One is to just throw Doomguy at Chaos and watch as it shrivels and dies. No more Chaos within a year, done. He's Doomguy. He killed God. creator of all reality god. The Chaos Gods can't compare to that. But my personal favorite is to take the Chaos Gods and have them fight against COD zombies that are at round 50 or higher. Shoot them with a las cannon, and it's like, oh cool, you empty 3 entire pack-a-punch LMG magazines into me? Congrats, you killed 2 zombies and made a crawler. Throw an entire Black Crusade at a single crawler, and they take it down after thousands of casualties and half their ammunition supply wasted. Or just melt their godly minds by implanting knowledge of the entire COD zombie storyline directly into their brains. Fucking Zinch couldn't handle that crap. Remember when it was just Group 935 messing with stuff they probably shouldn't? I miss those days.
Yeah, try explaining, you know, the actual story of Kingdom Hearts to the Chaos Gods and watch them implode, you know? So yeah, that was How to Beat Chaos by Pancreas No Work. Links down below in the description as always to the original video without my commentary and reaction and to Pancreas No Work's channel. If you enjoyed this video, please go over to his channel and be sure to give it a like. And if you enjoy the content he puts out there, please be sure to hit that sub button on the channel if you have not done so already and give the man some support. I mean, yeah, it's a great video. Just, I like these kind of what if hypothetical, you know, videos that make you think of various things. And I mean, there are definitely a lot of plausible ways for Chaos or the Chaos Gods to potentially be beaten. And it seems like in story, there have definitely been scenarios that have popped up that have threatened the Chaos Gods. You know, like you said, with the Chaos Gods sealing Sigmar away because, you know, he was very close to uniting Order against them, you know, so they could have been destroyed. Etc, etc. And like I said, you know, I mean, I said this numerous times throughout the video, the whole Emperor, you know, trying to suppress chaos by not letting people know about them and instilling, you know, science as almost kind of a belief system, and, you know, making sure that no one really kind of believed in any kind of supernatural to diminish them, etc. But like I said, I think if a Chaos God like Nurgle or Slanesh, as he said in the video, they at one point in time they did not exist and then they were created, and because timey-wimey whatever in the warp, that means they're always there, you know, once they've been born, whatever. But I feel like it would probably be a scenario where even if Khorne, Nurgle, Slanesh, if any of the major gods were actually destroyed or killed in some way, something else would essentially fill a similar role in a different way. It would just look different. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think you could ever like truly destroy chaos in its way. You could probably remold it, reshape it into something different, call it something different. Again, if you could actually achieve like true peace in the material world, I mean, there's always gonna be, you know, conflict. And I mean, just the Tyranids and the Orcs alone, because of their existence, you know, it would, there's always going to be war and conflict and suffering and things like that. But let's assume, you know, that you could actually achieve some kind of actual peace in the Imperium and with the Eldar and, you know, things like that, that you could at least diminish Chaos's influence, right? I just feel like it would be a situation where you could at least get the warp to not be so turbulent, and you could diminish their power, their influence in the material realm. But I don't think you could ever like truly destroy it, because again, I just think something else would end up taking its place and chaos would just look different. It would just be a different flavor of the same thing, kind of scenario. But who knows what will ever happen in the future. You know, things seem to be changing a lot in Age of Sigmar. There's more chaos gods there. There seem to be, you know, expanding the overall lore on that kind of level of existence, with, I guess, there being creatures and beings that even the chaos gods don't necessarily want to mess with. And I guess with the idea of, you know, Sigmar trying to get to like, I forget what he said, like wanting to join with like the winds of eternity and magic to empower himself further. So maybe there's even a way for other, you know, beings and things that could exist on a level even above what, you know, currently exists, you know, because again, it's one of those scenarios where like, who created the creators, you know? Is there a God above God? You know, if God created our universe and reality and everything that exists, is there a being that created God and any kind of reality that God would exist in? You know, is there a never-ending like chain of that kind of a situation, you know? So I don't know, but yeah, I like these kind of videos. It's always fun to, you know, theorize and hypothesize and what if, you know, come up with what if scenarios. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. You know, if you did, consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me and the channel grow. If you'd like to join us when I do these reactions live with my YouTube members, there's a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I have to offer. You can get early access to videos, priority any kind of reaction requests you might have, Discord access to members only channels, etc. So take a look at that stuff if you want to take your support for the channel to the next level. But thank you guys very much for just taking the time out of your day to watch the video. If you're still watching here to the very end, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do so. It means a lot. I greatly appreciate all your support. Yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you're having yourselves a wonderful day. We'll see you on the next one.